Alrighty, folks, it is 10:45 here on the East Coast. It is that time again. Welcome to Twitch Line, your home for relationship advice here on Twitch. I am your caster, Hotohori, joined as always by with my best friend and co-casting partner, Acorn. How you doing, buddy?
Very tired. It's been a hell of a week. We are moving my brother into his newly renovated by us apartment, and you know how it is when you move into a new place and you think you have what you need, but then you realize you're missing random tiny little things that you just never considered, but that was there. So we've just been running around buying up stuff and trying to make his home his home. So a little wiped, but looking forward to getting into it tonight here.
Yeah. Well, doing wonderful things for your brother. That is a nice thing that everybody should do for family. Then what you're doing right there is actually sort of awesome. So, as always, welcome to Twitch Line, everyone. You can contact us via our email address there at the bottom of the screen, twitchlinelove@gmail.com. You can send us articles, things you want us to talk about, or things you want us to just basically read over and give our opinion about. You can also tweet us at Twitchline on Twitter. We co-stream on to YouTube, so therefore, for those watching on YouTube, hello. You can join us at our YouTube channel, so just type in Twitchline on your home of relationship advice on YouTube, and you'll find us there. If you drop a subscribe button, you would really help us out, but then you would also have access to all of our previous shows, all of the things that we've done going back to when we started Twitchline, and it's just a nice place to sort of look back on past topics that we've actually talked to. And if you want to actually take us on the go, you can go via SoundCloud, where we've uploaded recent shows there onto SoundCloud. Just download the app there on your mobile device and then search Twitchline, and we will be right there, and you can listen to us anywhere you have an internet connection, and it'll be our most recent shows that we have up there. But as always, welcome to Twitchline. This Wednesday evening, it's been sort of cold, sort of not. The weather can't decide whether or not it wants to be completely freezing or okay warm, at least here on the East Coast. What do you think?
Yep, I'm prepared. I have basically, if you look in the back seat of my car right now, you will see all of the layers that have intentionally been worn out in the cold and then shed throughout the day. So I'm at the point almost where I'm looking for things to stay warm with when I'm up here, and I realize, it's all in my car. So gonna have to do a recall there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, definitely need to worry about that a little bit. But it's one of these things in which I think the weather has a tendency to affect people. Cold-wise, it's dreary. I hate the fact that I wake up in the mornings and it's like gray and sort of ugh. I wasn't like that this morning, but yesterday, it was awful. Didn't want to leave my house.
Yeah, it's hard to wake up on those days.
Yeah, and I've got to wake up super early tomorrow morning because I've got early morning meetings, so I'm just hoping at least for some sun. But less about me, more about what we're going to be talking today. So our first topic of the day here is about desperation, and it's about being okay to be desperate. I don't know, it's listed as a vent here on my screen, but, I don't know, desperation isn't necessarily associated with a lot of good things, but 33 Merlin 11, as I will go on and read this, may say otherwise. But let's go ahead and take a look at what Merlin here is saying. It's okay to be desperate. It is posted in the dating subreddit, on r/dating. He says, everyone wants to love and be loved. It is human nature to seek companionship. There is nothing wrong with being desperate. Those who have the most love to give and want to give it the most, are seen as the most desperate, and those who are seen as the most desperate are seen as the least attractive. Hence what I said, sometimes desperation is not looked upon as well. This is ass backward logic. If you want someone who is going to treat you right, find someone who is desperate to be with you. Having someone to be uninterested in you means that they're not going to care about your feelings. People need to stop going after people who aren't interested in them. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for your time. Yeah, that's a rant. And the logic he's trying to display is that people should love those who are desperately seeking them. And I don't know if I necessarily agree about desperately seeking them, but it's it's about people who want to be with them. And I don't mean in like a stalkerish way. Um, a healthy relationship, in my opinion, has two people who are willing to love each other in an equal manner. Desperation can throw off an imbalance, in my opinion, with regards to relationship. To always want to please a partner and make sure that they are taken care of, or always need to be attended to, can throw off, I think, a relationship into unhealthy regions. It's not necessarily, in my opinion, the most healthy, but I understand what he's trying to say. He's trying to say people should be with those who actually love them and not be with people who treat them like garbage, which is, I think, a sentiment that everybody would agree with. But I just don't think he is coming off the right way. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I didn't take this as nicely as you did. I think that this is wrong. I'm just straight up, man. There's no way around it. This is bad advice.
Yeah.
Yes, everyone wants to give and receive love. That's pretty, agreed upon all around. But what kind of love? With desperation, oftentimes comes dependency, and not everyone is dying to get into a dependent relationship because there are issues that come with that, imbalances, and not everyone is dying to get involved with someone who's willing to take whatever they can get, which often comes with desperation. Right? You don't want to be someone's. You want someone to choose you, not just choose someone so that they don't feel lonely or for whatever the rationale is. So in this case, I think uh, not just desperation comes off kind of ugly. And then if you consider almost any other situation where desperation leads your decision making, most of the time that's not good. The things you're willing to put up with, the things you're willing to do in a desperate situation, it's not your best self, and it's not necessarily going to lead to a very healthy relationship. I thought the comment about those who have the most love to give and want to give it are seen as the most desperate. That sort of threw me off a little bit. It just seems like they're trying to justify extreme behavior and thinking that somehow your desperation means that you have more love in you that you're willing to give. I don't think that's the case. Desperation is, in my mind, a place you go to when you feel like you don't have recourse
Mm-hmm.
and you feel like you are unable to get what you would want normally. So I don't think that somehow equals extra love to give. And housing it that way, I think, is kind of an attempt to sort of alleviate the negative that comes along with the concept of desperation. I mean, I think that's the whole post here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of messed up to assume that desperate people are somehow capable of giving more love than just the average person who wants, who has love to give, and that I don't see the connect there. So that sentence threw me off. I don't think desperation is attractive, and I think that expecting it to be is not going to yield good results. I don't think that telling people that they should be seeking someone who's desperate because that will somehow lead to them giving more to them. The question that comes to my mind is like, what does being desperate have to do with treating someone the right way? Because I think it can lead to imbalances
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like this over the top romanticism that can actually indicate a problem. Like, oh, I was so desperate to have this person. I did something I would have never done, and most people would never do. Sure, in the movies or in a book or something, that seems hyper romantic and special. But in real life, it actually indicates uh, kind of an inability of a person to consider what is like a rational behavior for a person who wants to show how much they love someone. So none of it looks good to me, man. That's where I'm coming at for this. I think it's good that they wrap up their post. The OP wraps up the post saying some legitimate stuff about, uh, not chasing after uninterested people, and there's something good there. But I get the sense that maybe this person thinks in black and white that like it's either you're dealing with uninterested people or desperate people. So maybe it's just the word they're using, or they have a sense that desperation is not as an extreme as I'm thinking of it. But my overall takeaway is I hope people reading this aren't thinking, oh, desperation is the way to go. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, desperation's not the way to go. And the thing about desperation that makes it really off-putting is the the methods where people will try to go about and get someone. I mean, they're not normal ways. Desperate people will resort to desperate measures, which to some people can seem like an overly romantic gesture, but in most people's cases, they'll consider it creepy. And in this day and age where people do not really associate with each other and get to know each other really well, overly desperate gestures look really, really bad uh, for people. I mean,
So you're referring to people who are connecting through like the internet or something,
yeah,
or
yeah,
apps,
exactly, or apps
as
or
opposed to
anything.
in person.
Is as
Okay,
opposed to in person. What'll
I
end up?
just want to clarify that
Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
you're meaning by that.
No, exactly. So you're absolutely right. So it overly romantic gestures when people meet via an app or internet dating, which is what majority of people end up doing nowadays, is creepy. It is one of those things where you don't need to do that. I mean, showing who you are is more important in dating as opposed to um, being overly romantic or very showy in your expression of emotion. I honestly believe that if people reject you and you're being yourself, then you don't need to be with them. It's
Right.
it's as simple as that. I mean, find somebody who loves you for who you are, because it leads to a more equal relationship. Now, do imbalances in relationships exist? Absolutely. Like it happens everywhere. You see men and women dominate relationships one way or another, but there are people who accept it because they get something out of it that they feel like it's an even trade. To other people, when people look at it, is it necessarily an even trade? Maybe from an outside's perspective,
Okay.
yeah, it's not, but within the relationship, it probably isn't, and
All right.
they
Let me jump
interpret it
off
into
this
what they.
then.
Yeah.
So, have you ever seen an imbalance, and like this could be your friends or just
Yeah.
people whatever, uh, in the relationship that the people in the relationship were completely oblivious to it and didn't see a problem with it, but for you it was like, whoa, what the hell's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. This is not an uncommon thing where it is. It's
How did it show up?
like like a May December relationship where one person is older. I come from a culture where a lot of the men are older than the women that they marry. Uh, the reason being either the men are just out there doing whatever it is that they're doing, and the women are more accepting of that type of behavior. Men at an older age are more financially stable, they have higher position, they marry a young wife, and they both get something out of it. She gets social status, and is able to climb in society, he gets a young wife that can do whatever what he needs sexually or whatever, and he's attractive and all sorts of other stuff.
But you're saying that these people are oblivious to it? They don't recognize those
I don't
dynamics?
think they're oblivious to it. I think they're wholly accepting of it.
Right.
And
And I think that's
yeah.
pretty common. But if we're like, the reason I asked the question is because I think that there are people that are living in relationships now that they just think that that's the way things are supposed to be. And like this post, the original post here, that they think desperation is just a normal part of a relationship, that that's how people are supposed to connect. And so if we think about imbalances and load in a relationship, like significant difference in what each person is adding financially, or the emotional labor that goes on to maintaining a relationship, or how much time you invest in the other person, when there's a huge disparity there, I think that people can get used to that and they can start to think that this is how it goes. But from the outside, people looking at that are like, whoa, no, 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 no. I don't want any part of that. That would never be me. And a lot of times people that are in it, when they get on to the next relationship, they kind of get a moment of clarity where they realize, oh crap, what I was doing before is actually very far off the norm.
Well, there's the traditional quote, uh, marriages that I used to see in the early, when I was younger, where there was a man who would expect his wife to do wholly everything, and the wife would completely think that it's normal for her to stay at home, take care of the kids, do all this other stuff, not have a career, not drive, all this other stuff, and it's completely oblivious to them that what they're doing is completely imbalanced. But I would look at it and was
Yeah.
just like, oh, he's thinking that it's a traditional relationship where the man is the breadwinner and and does all of the quote man things, whereas she is the homemaker and takes care of the home. And in a way, it's like, okay, that is what quote people think of as a traditional relationship, but it is imbalanced, and they look at
Right,
it,
but that was,
but they're oblivious to the fact that shouldn't necessarily be that way. They just feel
but the
like
thing is,
societal norms is actually. Hmm.
people on the outside during, if we're talking about 50 years ago, that
This is
was the
20 years.
culture. So
This is
that
20 years ago. This
okay,
is
well,
not
you
even
know what I'm
that.
saying. Like I'm
Yeah.
trying to put it further back so that there's no question. There was a time where doing something different than that, not having that imbalance, would have been the wrong way or awkward, or people would look at that as a strange thing.
Hmm.
Whereas now there's been a cultural shift, and expectations for gender roles and for your duties in a relationship and that kind of thing have shifted to more equal. Uh, and at this point, that traditional kind of vibe is starting to seem like a, uh, something that's a bit extreme,
Hmm. Well,
especially in young people. Go
there was a
ahead.
post 3 days ago, I think, where there was a guy who is, I think he was 25 and she was 22, and he made quote 7 times more money than she did, and he was posting on Reddit, and this is a completely different topic with regards to it, but it's the same thing. I don't know if it goes to desperation, but it was an imbalanced relationship where he was paying all of the bills and completely fine with it, and then he got hit over the head when she, who made 7 times less and didn't have a career, was still going to college, wanted to pool their resources into a single bank account. And he then, it sort of like clicked for him. Then he realized that, he was financially basically taking care of everything, and she was literally leeching. And it only took the that conversation where she had is like, well, I don't think it's fair that you have all of this extra money and you're not, and all you're doing is saving it, and I'm here, working my Starbucks job and going to school and not having any extra. I think we should pool our resources. And then it took that to finally have him realize that their relationship was imbalanced. And and then of course the internet sort of chimed in and let him know. It's like, dude, you're an
Yeah,
idiot.
was
Yeah.
this a dating thing, or was this more
It
like
was,
am
it
I
was
the asshole?
no, this was in I think it was in Am I the Asshole? Because I think the question was was it okay to break up with my girlfriend when she asked me to pool our money? And everybody was like, no, of course not. But the thing about it is he had been dating her for so long that he was just used to taking care of all of like the necessary needs that he had, the mortgage, insurance, car payments, stuff like that. They had lived together for 3 or 4 years, starting in college, but he had already gotten a job, graduated, and actually made a ridiculous amount of money. And she thought it was unfair that she was being left behind.
Yeah,
So it's like,
that's a
and
pretty
yet she
extreme
was
example, but
oblivious to the fact that, like, she was still taking college classes and not actually having a real job. So that happens. Yeah.
yep, and I think that's a good example of that sort of the veil that exists when you're inside a relationship and you're unable to kind of see how it might look from the outside or how it should be. You kind of get caught up in it, and I guess that's what all these subreddits are about dating. It's people looking for kind of clarity, outside perspective on their thinking or their personal situations. So that's what we give you, man. That's one of the things we do here. Instead of just one line of break up with them, go screw yourself, whatever,
Yeah.
we go deep. We could spend 15, 20 minutes and like work through it. So if the original poster here were to ask me, do I think it's okay to be desperate? I'll say no. And that's my bottom.
No,
That's my
I'd
bottom line
probably
right there.
I'd probably say the same thing, because I just don't think it's becoming of a person, man or woman, to be quote desperate. But I think we
Mhm.
agree on that for sure.
Yep.
So,
Let's jump on to our next topic.
yep. And
Um,
the
this,
next topic is always a touchy one when it comes to relationships. It's politics.
for
Like,
sure. Yeah.
I mean, before we go into this, we live in a city that is very politically charged. Um, if you socialize with a lot of people here in the city that we live in, uh, more or less, you will actually end up talking about politics around that. And it is exhausting to a point if you are not working for the government, but it can be a lifestyle. Just to preface that before we actually get into our topic here. So,
Yeah, you aren't
yeah.
kidding. We are about as close as you can get to the center of politics in America. I could pretty much throw poop at the White House. I'm not saying I would do that,
Secret Service.
but I'm not saying I wouldn't either. So there you go with that. Anyways, let's move on. So this one we pulled from Dating Over 30, the subreddit. And our user's name is Hammers and Stuff. Yeah, Hammers and Stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, the question is, do you ask about political leanings? If so, when? If not, how? The user writes, I am finding myself, especially in this current political climate, being unable to continue even chatting on online dating, let alone actually meeting up with someone for a date who has opposite political leanings than I do. Yes, it is important to me, and I would think that it would be for all people, but I digress. When and how do you ask someone if you match and message with them on online dating what their political leanings are? And I do not mean get into a debate or anything, just to know which side area they lean into simply. I am to the point that I want to know pretty much within the first few messages, but it is such a turnoff to ask. Not everyone puts it in their profile. I wish they did. I do. But I still have matched with guys who are opposite me, and then they try to convince me still to meet up. And I'm like, hard pass. Good luck. I'm very kind about it. That didn't sound too kind. But it is a deal breaker. And I do not see a point in even attempting to waste time to get to know someone romantically who is so opposite of me in terms of politics. And then there's just an edit saying, I say in my profile what my views are. I still get men who chat me up who are the opposite. So this is not for lack of trying to weed them out. but not everyone lists political affiliation on their profiles. All right. So, politics, religion, the hot topics in dating are important, but are they first date important? Are they pre-date, online date, like app messaging important? The first thing that comes to my mind on this subject is that opposite politics, like politics is not an island, right?
Yeah.
It's more of a thing than do you like to eat cauliflower or not. Like, it's not a simple thing like that. When people associate themselves with a political party, it often comes with a lot of ethical values and stances on major issues. For example, maybe I'm reading to this, but I get a sense that this woman is pretty political one way or another, and that she's meeting guys whose politics conflict with her worldviews, and she's not having that. So let's say her thing is like autonomy and of women's control of her own body and the rights to herself, putting her on the left. Then a guy who would be more conservative and be more supportive of the government having some control over that would probably just be a straight up no-go, like without any messages exchanged. It would just be done. And so, that's pretty intense. That's pretty real. And so therefore it's something that needs to be discussed on here, because people have to deal with that. And we have the full spectrum, far left to far right, and they are out there trying to date. And you know what? Sometimes people with the opposite political leanings are very attractive, and that's a problem. Because you can't just deal with whether or not you want to jump on them. You got to think about,
well, Fox
after
News
I jump on them,
they've turned
can
it
I
into
communicate with them?
Yeah, Fox News has turned it into a political rally. Like, they hire a certain type of looking woman to associate themselves with, and they do it on purpose.
That's the Hollywood effect as well,
of course. But the thing about politics that makes it so complicated is because when you talk politics, you're being judged for who you are. Because what it is that people associate politics with actual beliefs of what people, live by. The Democratic Party isn't the be-all, end-all of, belief systems, or the Republican Party isn't. But there are associated beliefs on both sides that people cannot get behind. Abortion being one. It is assumed that if you are in one party that you are for it, and if you are for another party that you're against it. And the reason that you would be against it is because of religious doctrine. And it basically shapes your world belief and your world view. So therefore, when you get into political leanings, it becomes very, very difficult. And I'll provide a personal example. I am not in any way a right-wing person. I believe in a lot of liberal things. I don't consider myself a far left liberal, but I believe that personally, I think the Republican Party is a sort of now become like a bastion of a-holes. And that is a personal belief of mine, just because of how it is that it's going on. And I've met women who are in the Republican Party. I've helped, I work with a couple of them, but I'm not going to judge them based on their political leanings. I judge them for who they are. And when you're dealing with online dating, you don't get to know a person well enough, because that sign that says Democrat or Republican or whatever it is just immediately turns you off, because you just feel like that person being associated with that is just completely against your own personal beliefs, and you just don't want to have that conversation. You don't want to have that debate. You won't want to deal with the issues that are associated with it, which is why like hammers and stuff almost feels like it's like I'm just not even going to put up with it. There's just no way because I just don't want to get into that because it would infuriate me. And because politics is now out there for everyone to see, people are posting what they believe on the internet all the time, and people say it's like I just don't want to be political, blah blah blah. What they're actually saying is that I don't want to get my own personal beliefs out there so that I can be judged for being a good or a bad person because this is what I believe. It, it's really difficult because it it's you're trying to tell people who you are without trying to tell people what you believe. And it is almost weird to think that way, but that is exactly what you're doing when you're not trying to talk politics with people. Um, because political influences affect our daily lives. Whether a Republican or a Democrat is in charge of the government affects how you live as a society. Um, be it what laws are enacted, what is banned, what is not banned, who gets taxed, who doesn't get taxed. Everything like that is all affected by a political leaning. And for you to say one way or the other makes it very, very difficult for someone to accept you as a person because they might completely object to you being okay or against whatever is being put out there. And it becomes a real roadblock for people to basically join up and have relationships. And it just gets worse in this particular sort of era of dating because politics has politics has always been different, and it's been one of those things that has always been, quote, kept in the back room where you don't actually discuss it. But with the current generation that's coming up, politics is upfront, it is in your face, and you have to deal with it. And a lot of people who are very meek have real issues with it. And I think I've sort of ranted on for too long, so I'm going to stop.
Oh, I mean, so what you said has about five things jumped into my head. So I'm
Yeah.
just going to kind of go with it here. Um, a lot of it also has to do with the times, as you're saying.
Yeah.
A Republican or Democrat today looks very different than one 20 years ago. So people who are associating themselves with a party and a leaning and the ideas, all of these things that come along with attaching yourself to one side or the other may also be bound by the time frame in which you conceive of that party. So someone might be a 1990s Democrat or 1980s Republican or like that kind of thing. And a lot of that is lost now. Everyone just people like to put other people in a box. They already have their judgments about what a conservative, what a liberal looks like, does, believes, and they really, really, to make their lives easier, they want to fit you into slot A or slot B, and so that makes it easier for them to decide what they think about you. And it's bullshit, and it ignores every possibility of nuance or any part of being in the center. And it's actually a huge problem. So people that are going on and setting up their dating profiles and putting up things like, if you are a liberal or a conservative, don't even bother. You're cutting out a large portion of possibilities in your love life, and maybe it's rightfully so. Maybe it's just that strong for you, but you're not allowing the possibility that this person could be more moderate, or they could associate themselves with a time from before. Like sometimes you got to give people a chance to be themselves before you write them off. And just because someone is in the same political leanings as you doesn't mean it's going to be easy in any way or that they're the right person for you.
Hmm.
So, to say you're automatically off my list because of your politics, it's kind of a hard angle to run. Um, so if we just, we've kind of talked about the whole thing itself, but in dating, when would you say is the right point? Like, at what point do you ask about the other person's political leanings?
My personal opinion?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's all I ever asked for.
I I think it's when you absolutely get to know the person and you feel like it is a relationship that could go somewhere. Uh,
When is that?
Maybe, the thing about it is timing and all that stuff is all weird, but maybe after a month of dating, because a month of dating, you'll go anywhere between 3 and 7, 8 dates, dating on the weekdays and even on the weekends, things like that. You get to know a person, you get to know them relatively well over a month, as you spend more time with them, and you can get over things a little easier because you have been with them for an extended period of time, and you either have grown to really like them or you are still having doubts. In any way, it is a question that you could pull out and basically say, "Hey, look," and it's like, we've never discussed this, and I really don't want to bring it up, but I figure I need to. I think if we're going to want to continue relationship, is like, well, what do you think of this? And you can ask a roundabout question about politics. You don't necessarily have to come straight out and say, "Are you a Republican or a Democrat?" Or, "Are you liberal or conservative?" Or, "Are you a socialist or a libertarian?" You ask them what they think of a political happening, and ask them to give their honest opinion about it. And the thing about it is like, a person would be honest with you, especially in a situation where you've been dating for a month or two, to answer the question, because at that point, most people don't feel like they're going to be judged, at least judged superficially, without somebody not knowing who they are. So you take that opinion, they'll be honest about their opinion, and then you can have maybe a spirited debate with them if you feel like that they're completely on the opposite side of the topic, or if they are with you in the topic, then you can commiserate, or I don't think commiserate is the word, or you can agree with them on their leanings. And the problem is that somebody could be too far in other directions, where you could be a liberal, but you're just not a staunch liberal. Say you're more of a centrist liberal, or you're a conservative, but you're a centrist conservative and not a far right winger. I mean, it happens where you could be on the same side and you're still way apart. And the thing about it is it happens. I mean, my ex boss was a far right winger. I would even consider him a Trumper, and he was a very highly successful businessman who was very, well to do, meaning integrated into society, great, was all right. His wife was a staunch liberal, and they made it work for 35 years. So, like, it's not the be all end all of everything. That stuff, is extra. But to them, their political beliefs, even though they're strong and they feel about it in their particular way, did not affect their relationship in the wrong one, because they felt like that their relationship was more about being together, raising their kids, and doing what they thought was more right than believing whether or not he or she was a liberal or a conservative. No.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to come down to their individual relationships and whether or not they can overcome the gap in their belief systems, and also what their role is. And like in some relationships, politics doesn't play a role because it's not, it's just not on the menu for them. They if they're both going out and like are crazy political for their sides, then it's probably less likely that it's going to go smoothly. But if one side is sort of doesn't care so much about it, and it doesn't really affect them, then why not? For me personally, I wouldn't do it. If my boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, whatever, had beliefs that were just too different than my own, I feel like it would cause discord. We would not be able to look at the world the same way. And I'm not interested. I want to be able to share that part of the world with them. So, actually, even someone who's apolitical, I probably wouldn't want anything to do with, because that to me is kind of like, it occurs to me as someone trying to just ignore the world around you and exist in a bubble.
Yeah.
But that's me. I think we're good with this. I
Yeah,
think
I
we
think
talked
so.
about this. I think it's a good question, and I'm glad it came up. I think that our friend here, hopefully, she will find her way. Hammers and stuff. That's her name. And I don't think she's doing it wrong. If this seems, it's important enough to her to be putting in her profile, and it's important enough to her to get on Reddit and write a question about it. So if it's that important to her, lead with it, and cut out the people you're not interested. But just be aware of what that might mean.
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing I would say is that there is a danger of only associating with people that believe the same as you and not getting a fresh perspective on things. That's the only thing that I would say. Because sometimes it is necessary to see how the other side thinks, just to give you a sense of perspective. But that is the only thing I will say with regards to that. Because it is completely your choice whether or not you want to associate with people who do not.
And you don't have to date the other side to get that. You can have friends, or
Oh, sure.
you can go read message boards.
You don't. Yeah, you don't have to be in a relationship with that person to actually get that. But it is just one of those things that you do shut off a complete 100, like a 50% side of the dating pool. So it's just something you have to be aware of.
All right, let's dive into number 3.
All right.
You want to take it?
Yeah. Exes. So the topic of exes has come up on this show multiple times, and we have perspectives on how we feel, what we feel, how we should relate to exes, and we've expressed our opinions with regards to that. So let's go into the topic and just jump on in this particular case. This one is from Why Not So Salty. So why so NACL, why so salt, and then 1327. And this is from the Dating Over 30 subreddit. So this was posted a day ago, and the topic is speaking of exes. And here we go. I'm finding that many, but not all of the people I end up dating have been divorced, or at least been in a 5-year or more relationship. Inevitably, the topic of exes comes up. This is a tricky subject. We all have our internal dialogue of what happened, but there are 3 sides to all stories, and I am sure I am the bad guy in my ex's story. What are the things you say to avoid saying when discussing your ex? What are the red flags you look out for? Why I try to avoid laying all blame on my ex. A marriage involves 2 people. I look out for people who say it's all their ex's fault. I also look out for the word crazy. It's disrespectful to people with legitimate mental health issues and usually not true. This is actually very level-headed. For
You
why
don't
so?
expect this of Redditors?
Not really. I mean, Redditors are usually to an extreme in most cases, but I like the 3 sides to all stories because that's an old Babylon 5 reference for those science fiction fans out there. They used to say the truth is a 3-edged sword. His side, her side, and the truth. And that's where that sort of idea comes from, because everything can be conflated with emotion, especially on both sides, and then there's the perspective of somebody who's not in it, who sees what's going on and has the actually, this is what's going on. I think when you're just the thing about it is like, let's start with the subreddit itself. When you are in Dating Over 30, there is a higher propensity of dating women or men, be it whoever they are, who are divorced. There are people who, we've seen the dating pool actually increase, where people who used to be married in their early 20s have been pushing back marriages later on in life because of careers, money, all sorts of different things. But there is a higher propensity if you are dating in the 30 range that the person that you could be dating is coming off of a marriage, uh, an early mistake, whatever it could have been, spouse leaving, death, whatever it could be, that could happen. And it's something that you're not going to be able to avoid eventually, because if that person is still living, if there are kids involved, if there are other aspects of the relationship where the person is still involved in this person that you're dating's lives, you're going to have to bring it up. What I find refreshing about this particular person is the fact that he is very sensible, or she is very sensible about the topic in general, regarding how you should describe your ex, and basically even uh, coming up with a red flag chart as to how people should describe how what I would find off-putting with regards to describing exes, which is actually a little smart, because you're taking a look at the mental state of the person who is discussing their ex, and you're trying to examine whether or not this person is a blamer. Is this person uh, someone who uh, finds no responsibility for their behavior? Uh, things that could pop up later in a relationship that you're having with this particular person, that could lead to problems, and it that's actually very smart, in my opinion. I mean, like, you're not going to be able to judge everyone completely based on their complete comments. I mean, there are going to be people out there who say it's like, well, it just didn't really work out between the two of us, and I don't really feel like talking about that at the moment. That's fine, and then they could turn around and be obsessive and controlling or whatever, and it was completely them, not their ex. You just don't find out later. But it's one of those things that I think if two people are in a relationship, especially the other person is being divorced, that it's going to have to come up. And, uh, over a glass of wine, some people are very honest about what happened in their relationship. And I think it's healthy to discuss, this in a sort of controlled manner. Now, I wouldn't want a person that I'm dating obsess over their ex or anything like that. But I would say, it is something that could be a true, honest conversation starter with regards to, all right, I don't want to do this in my new relationship. How do I prevent myself from basically falling into the same traps? Or my previous relationship had this. Are you a controlling person? And I can't stand being around somebody like that now. Like, shows off little warnings and little things that maybe could help you progress going forward. Yep.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you
That's
think?
all. It's all legit. Um, I am, and I've told this to you before. I've told
Yeah,
this to
yeah.
people on here. I am the person that says exes should be left in the past, and you know,
Oh yeah.
not even as much as like should we maintain a friendship, but sometimes even just the discussion of exes just needs to go. But that's after a certain point. I do think initially it's going to come up, unless you have zero dating history. Someone's going to ask about, you know, what what's in your bag, what kind of luggage you're carrying with you, baggage even. um, so does it come up on the first date? Sometimes, and you'll see people, Tinder nightmares and things like that, where people are talking about how they went on a date with someone and that person spent the whole date getting trash drunk and talking about their ex. So yeah, that's not exactly the way you want to do it. But sometimes these questions come up because people will get a sense. They want to get a sense of who they're getting involved with and how that person has been involved with others. And there's something good to that. Uh, Generally, for me, I don't necessarily bring it up. If someone asked me, I would respond, and I think that it doesn't hurt to ask, and their response can tell you a lot about how they deal with their emotions, how they deal with their history, whether or not they have real closure, whether or not they're still hooked on that person. You kind of get a sense of like, how long has this person responded to this question, and how much emotion is coming out in this, and you can get a read on them to find out that maybe this person is not actually emotionally available and they are still hooked on their ex. Or maybe this person just recently got dumped and they are angry and they just want to forget that person by getting out there and dating. Also very valuable information to have if you're deciding whether or not you want to connect with this person, start something. So then I'd say, well, how should we approach this? Right? If you want to talk about your ex, or if you want to know about their ex, what are some rules you might follow to make sure you do it the right way? I would say people should try to veer towards the positive. Like the person said, don't use words like crazy and things like that, because it doesn't make you look good if you're shitting all over your ex and basically you come across kind of angry and still caught up in it. And you know what? Venom is not a very sexy thing. So probably, you don't need to gush over the person, but at least keep it on the positive side if you can. I would say don't lie, because it can come back to bite you if you decide to go long distance, long term with this person. That lie would have to be maintained forever. So it's better just to be straight up about it. But that's tough because, if you cheated on your ex, you're not, the first thing you say to someone going on a date is not going to be like, hey, yeah, I cheated on my ex and the one before that, but let's get together. It'll be different this time. That's going to be rough.
Yeah.
Hard sell. I would say be open to questions, but don't spend the whole date on it. Some people, once they get going, they just like unload, and that's a little bit overwhelming. You don't want to get, you don't want to dump all that on someone or have them dump it on you. Also, back to that whole lie thing, like recognize that this person is listening closely, probably taking notes, and likely placing some sort of judgment on you. So it's not like because they ask you suddenly get this free pass and afterwards it'll all just float away. This is going to affect how they continue with you. I would also say owning up to your own part in the demise of the relationship is important, right? If you go in, like you were talking about, if you dump all the blame on someone else, they're going to say, okay, this person doesn't like to take any responsibility at all, and doesn't have a mirror to look into to see what their faults are. I'd say don't compare your ex to the person sitting across from you. If you're like, oh, I love this about my ex, and oh, you have this or you don't have this, that's just a fail from the go, man. And I think you can also use all this stuff as like a jump off point to learn more about the person you are on the date with. You can commiserate about how it sucks, this thing sucks or that thing sucks, but like just don't make it the focal point of the whole date. So Z, do you think that the rules in this are different if you're talking about an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend versus an ex-husband or wife? Like, do you owe someone more of an explanation for the failure of a more serious relationship?
I don't know if you necessarily owe them more with regards to why something collapsed, whether it be an ex-girlfriend versus an ex-wife, but you do have to, if there are kids involved, or outstanding issues associated to an ex-husband, that absolutely deserves an extended explanation. Because you absolutely need to know about what you're getting into with regards to an ex-husband or an ex-wife. Because in that particular situation, there might be more instances where the ex has a tendency to pop up. And in that particular case, then you have to absolutely understand what you're getting into. And there's no way around that, unfortunately. And I keep using kids as the main driver, but usually it really gets complicated when kids are involved, because you need to know, like, your dating time gets cut short based on another person's life that this person is going to have to need to take care of. and the other person is their biological parent. So therefore, they're going to need to be involved in things that you do that involve everybody here. So absolutely.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that's the most extreme case when it comes to that stuff. So
yeah. I
yeah.
think most so for people who are not married yet and still dating, a more significant thing like that might be how long you're with your ex. So if you just dated people for 1 month, 2 months, or whatever, there may not be a lot to that story, and it may not be indicative of who you are and what you know and how you feel and all. It might just be, hey, that didn't work. But if you meet someone, they're like, hey, yeah, my last relationship was 8 years. There's a story in there. There's likely a lot of stories in there, and it's not that you have to share them, but there's something that they can learn about you if you do share that, and the other way around. So, uh, a sort of PSA here. Um, it should be recognized that some people can't take this stuff. Like they can't handle their feelings of jealousy or whatever about you having had any previous history with another person. And that is a sign of immaturity in a relationship, but it happens a lot. Um, they even made fun of in a cartoon strip where this guy is with his girlfriend and he's about to talk about an ex-girlfriend or something like that, and she just like puts her fingers up to his lips and is like, shh, that's the before time. Like she doesn't want to
We've
even
showed that
acknowledge.
cartoon here on
Yeah,
this
yeah,
channel. Yeah.
right, right. So it's that same sort of thing though. Like, know what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a jealous person, bringing up the exes, it's going to hurt you in more ways than one, man. So, pick your poison.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's one of those things in which it can come up. It doesn't come up. It can be about whether or not you want it to come up too. So you also have the right to basically say, "Hey, look, that's it. I don't want to talk about them. This is my relationship with them. Does not in any way involve you," and that is probably the easiest shutdown answer that you can have.
Good
Hmm.
luck with it, though.
Yeah. Good luck with it. But
If you do that, they're going to be like, well, what are you hiding? Now I need to dig
well,
more. Now I
and
can't
that's the
sleep.
thing. It's like it's like how nosy is the person that you're dating. So it's like, okay, it's fine. I just don't want to talk about it. So it is what it is. But I think we're just going to end it on that particular note because you know what, talking about exes can be very, very exhausting, and the exes that I have, uh, most of them, actually all of them ended in a way that was amicable, not for not in a sense that, oh, it ended up in a relationship that's great, but it there was no bitterness. It just didn't either end up working out, um, or naturally the relationship just took its course and it just sort of fell apart. But not something I would probably want to talk to somebody about either. So you're from the house of, that was the before time. That is something I really do not want to go into. But I don't have any animosity towards any of my exes. I just don't feel like I would want to talk to about them.
Yeah, not the same. I'm open to talk about exes. I try to learn something from everyone I interact with. So if someone wants to know about it, I'll talk about it. But I don't I don't sweeten anything up. So if the person I'm with is not able to hear what I'm saying and to take, like, basically what I'm saying is like, I'm not going to shit on the person to make you feel better. I'm going to say this part was good, this part wasn't. This is how we dealt with each other. But uh, some people are just looking for a story that ends up with, but now I have you, and
that
that's
that's
not me.
the
I'm not delivering that.
I think that's the one thing that we did neglect to mention is the fact that sometimes people use the story of exes, and this is going to be my final thing on this, um, as a way of putting themselves higher on your personal chart, and it's a bit selfish when you really think about it, because the person is trying to rank themselves higher on a likability chart versus a previous relationship that you had, using negative emotions to do it. And it's like, yeah, it's like, I'm dating you now. Why the fuck would you not think that I don't find you at the top of my chart anyway? And it's one of those like self-conscious things that both men and women suffer from, and because it's not just one or the other. People want to know that they feel like at that moment they are, top of the pops, and the issue with that is it opens up an entire can of worms that both people might not be ready for. So be careful what you ask about. That's I'm going to end it on that.
Good deal, man.
Yeah. So that is going to be it for us tonight. Thank you very much for joining us this evening on Twitch Line. Just as a reminder, we're available at any time via email on twitchlinelove@gmail.com. You can also tweet us if you want to do it that way. We're always monitoring the Twitter at Twitchline. As we said before, we co-stream onto YouTube. So at the same time, while we are on Twitch, we are also on YouTube. Search Twitchline Relationship Help and Advice. There you'll find our channel. Drop a subscribe and make sure that you check out any of our old shows. They're archived right there on Twitch, so that you can check them out and see what we've been doing. So every show is logged and saved, as well as taking us on the go on SoundCloud. Just search Twitchline Relationship Advice. You'll find our channel there, and all of our recent shows are usually uploaded there within a day or two on SoundCloud. But that's going to do it for us. Catch us here every Wednesday at 10 o'clock, or around 10 o'clock in this particular case. It's somewhere in the 10 o'clock hour, when we go live again and we discuss issues that you email us or issues from Reddit. But that is going to do it for this evening. I am Z. That is my friend Tim. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we will talk to you next time.
Good night.